Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on training and development brought to you by Plant Services and TPC. I'm Tom Wilk, the Chief Editor of Plant Services, and thanks for joining us today. This webinar is sponsored by TPC, the leader in maintenance, repair, and operator training with complete solutions for a 21st century workforce to acquire, apply, and adapt essential technical and safety skills. Now, before I introduce today's speaker, there are a few housekeeping issues I'd like to review with you. On your screen, you should see several primary sections. The upper left or audio control section allows you to adjust the volume of the presentation. Just hover over that section with your cursor until you see the audio volume controls, and then adjust it to your preference. To the right, in the largest section, is where today's presentation slides will be displayed. And under that slide window, you'll see a chat section, and this is where you can chat live with fellow audience members today. At the left of the slide window is the Ask a Question box, and this is the place where you can type in questions for the presenter at any time during today's webinar, whether you're listening live day or on demand. We'll get to as many live day questions as we can during a Q&A portion following the presentation, and for those of you who are listening on demand, we'll get those questions to the presenter so he can take those up with you offline via email. Also, the handout section at bottom left contains a link to the full set of today's speaker slides. Finally, at the side of your screen, you should see icons for additional features. By hovering over each icon, information about it will be displayed. If you have any technical problems, you can type in your question or concern in the Ask a Question box, and one of our technical engineers will assist you directly. If you need a better view of any sections, especially the main slide window, you can enlarge those sections by clicking on the box in the top right corner of the section, the box next to the X. If you accidentally close out any sections, you can get them back by clicking the Restore icon. It's the icon in the shape of an arrow in a circle. This webinar will be archived, and we encourage you to direct coworkers to the recorded presentation. And finally, at the end of today's presentation, we will ask you to complete a very brief survey to provide some feedback that we can use to improve future webinars. And now I'd like to welcome our speaker for today, Ryan Smith, who will deliver a presentation on building knowledge and hands-on skills through digital training, What's Possible. Ryan is the Director of Technical Content for TPC. He is an engineer by trade and has been in the industry for over 13 years. Ryan has served as an instructor with TPC for 6 years and served in the role of product management and content delivery for 3 of those 6 years. Welcome, Ryan, and thanks for presenting today.
It's my absolute pleasure, Tom. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, today we are going to talk all about building knowledge and hands-on skills, and really kind of the difference between building knowledge in a digital environment and building hands-on skills in a digital environment. And really talking about what's possible. So we're going to discuss different methods of training that might be historically understood about digital training and what we've come to understand about it, but also where digital training might be heading and what's possible today with digital training for the sake of a training program at your facility. So really the outline of today's session is, first of all, differentiating between knowledge and skills. That's our first objective of the session today. And really, what is the difference and importance of picking up each of those for the sake of, let's say, being qualified for a job or other purpose? Is it possible to learn hands-on? So I think that is the question really at the table in today's session. Is it really possible to learn hands-on in a digital environment, or is something just too far gone and too missing in that format? And we'll see if we can approach answering that question, or at least provide some information that can help you feel more informed in your ability to answer that question. And then methods of learning in a virtual environment. So obviously, I think many of us on the call are no stranger to Zoom and video chat lately. Really, that method of virtual learning, but also a way to learn online in a variety of ways, including simulations and skills-based activities. And we'll talk about the different opportunities for learning in this environment outside of simply just video chat. And then putting it all together, once we hear about all the methods that are possible, how do we put them together into a cohesive training program, and what are some ideas there in terms of that? In the case study that we'll be talking about today is a digital troubleshooting curriculum concept. So really, how can all of these learning methods digitally be put together in a really cohesive and hands-on and interactive learning pathway for people in your organization? And then really, okay, we can put together as many classes as we want, but if they're not worth the money we spent on them, what's the point? So really, we're going to talk a little bit about return on investment. And so those of you who are in that position of management or in the position of, okay, tell me the dollars and cents behind why digital training in particular is worthwhile or not. We'll talk about some of the return on investment ideas behind digital learning. And then finally, we'll discuss some real world scenarios from actual people who have pursued digital training and some of the results they've seen, but also some of the ways in which they use individual approaches to digital training in their workplace. So the first one is, right, differentiating knowledge from skills. So on this slide here, definitely make it as big as possible if you want to see some of the details here, because we're looking at I'm sure many of you on the electrical side of the world recognize what you're seeing here, multimeter, right, with a bunch of different settings on display here. And let's say it's your job today to take this multimeter and measure inside of this cabinet we see right next to it. So there's red wires, there's blue wires, there's black wires. There's a bunch of devices in here. And first of all, do we know what the devices in this cabinet are called? And do we know what that blue color, red color, and black color signify? What does that mean, right? And when I'm going in there and I plug in the red and the black lead into this meter, what setting do I turn my meter to, right? The ability to answer some of those questions, it really speaks to both knowledge and skills. But really, I think the way to differentiate between a knowledge and a skill, let's start with a skill. I think we all associate skills with something more hands-on, more interactive. So really, I think a nice simple way to put a skill is really knowing how. So a skill is knowing how to do a job. All right, I'm going to go into this panel. I'm going to turn this multimeter to AC voltage mode, because I know I've done that hundreds of times. I've gotten that muscle memory of turning this on to the V with the squiggly line on it. And then I'll go and I'll test from blue to red. And I know I'm supposed to be getting 208 volts from blue to red. I know I'm supposed to be getting 208 volts from red to black. And then similarly, I'm supposed to get 208 volts from black to blue. I know that because I've done this 100 times, right? But then knowledge comes into play, right? So knowing what you should be doing and how you should be doing it safely and properly, that's skills, right? But then knowledge really comes into knowing why you're doing it, right? So why am I getting 208 volts from black to blue? Why am I getting, why do I have to switch to the squiggly line voltage reading and not the straight line voltage reading on my meter when I'm getting into this panel? What would the difference be? So all those kind of things is a perfect example of why, right? And then really the best way to, how do we prove that knowledge, right? How do we verify that knowledge in a digital format or otherwise, right? How can I really verify that I know why? And let's say, does someone know how to explain to others why? They might know why up in their brain, but can they explain to others around them, let's say their supervisors or someone they're training on the floor, can they explain why? That speaks to a whole other level of knowledge. There's really a difference there, right? So the way we approach training for building a skill is its own ballgame, right? It has to be more hands-on, it has to be more interactive, it has to be more how-to, right? Whereas knowledge can be more foundational, more fundamental, more motivational to understand, really dig deep into why we do things. Why do I need to have a proper category rating of my meter? Why do I need to visually inspect the leads of my meter? Why do the colors matter inside this panel, right? And why are they colored the way they are? That kind of thing. And what if the wires were orange, brown, and yellow inside of this cabinet? What would that mean? And all these kind of things, right? There's all sorts of different ways that can be picked up through training, right? So if you think about for yourself, or let's say anyone doing electrical work in this case, in your plant, which ways are they developing these skills? Which ways are they developing these pieces of knowledge? That's really what the question on the table is. But we're going to focus on one kind of universe, I guess you could say, of training and learning in general. And that is it possible to learn hands-on in a digital format? So we're really going to focus on the digital format and explore some ways to learn digitally. That's really the focus of today's session. We know that today's world has really migrated to digital. We're hearing digital this, digital that, and really what we mean by digital is by using some sort of electronic device to aid in your learning, whether it's your computer, your laptop, or your handheld device like a tablet or a cell phone even. You can do some really good digital learning using basically a device that's either connected to the internet or maybe not, doesn't need to be connected to the internet, but you are using a technological device to aid in your learning. And it's not either just in person in a classroom with person to person, and it's not necessarily just on paper where you're taking a test or anything like that. It really has evolved beyond that format and allowed you to do a bunch of different types of learning. So the key with digital learning, and because of the options available that we're going to be talking about, there's no one way of succeeding, right, in digital learning. It really all depends on what the culture of your organization is, what the preferences for learning, the learning styles are in your organization. And we're going to talk about some of those factors today as we talk about return on investment and that kind of thing. So let's create a blank slate here. And we're talking about learning methods, digital learning methods, right? So I think the first method I'd like to talk about is the one we might think of first when we think about digital learning, and that's e-learning, right? So e-learning, and then following that up with instructional short video. So let's back up to e-learning, self-guided e-learning. These can be worth their weight in gold, but for different people, it means different things, right? So e-learning essentially is, I'm sure many of you are familiar with clicking through self-guided e-learning modules where there's text, there's interactive pictures. For those who are hard of hearing, they can get closed captions. You're hearing narration, so it's voice guided, and it's really telling you this is really more geared in my estimation here toward knowledge, right? So you're really loading people with e-learning with all the knowledge they need and why we do things the way we do, either in our facility or in our field or in the job at hand. So, what is current? What is amperage? Why do we call it amps? What is voltage? What does a voltage reading on a meter mean? You can discuss all these things in an e-learning format. And what's great about e-learning, obviously, is that it's reviewable and done at your own pace. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to return on investment. So, those of us who read a book, it's not the same as reading a book by taking e-learning because of the interactive nature of, okay, we're stopping the action. You can either review what you just read and go back through some of the content or continue. And then it's time to interact with certain drag and drop activities throughout the class and really interact with what you're seeing on your screen to practice what you're learning. Kind of doing knowledge check skills, right? So that's the first one. The next one we're talking about is really these instructional short videos and micro-learning. So micro-learning has definitely been a hot topic in recent years in the training industry. This one really, it's still a hot topic, I guess you could say, in the training industry. And we're no stranger to micro-learning as a culture now, because this is really the YouTube effect, right? This is having a very specific need, a very specific skill you want to practice, whether it's changing in the headlight on the left side of your Toyota Corolla or whatever it might be. You can log in, you can find a video for that, let's say on YouTube. You watch a video for 4 minutes and then you got the information you need and you're done, right? I'm sure all of you can think of times where you just looked up something and you watched a video on how to do it, right? And so TPC obviously is in the business of video as well. So imagine, right, self-guided learning, you're learning about the basics, and then you jump over to someone, let's say either an instructor, an expert in the topic, following that up as part of your curriculum with an actual video of how to do that job, right? So these videos can be, all right, here's how a relay works. Now here's how the relays look, and here's exactly how to lock out and tag out the machine right here in our plant, right? And here's a 3-minute video on how to do so to really hit the area home. They really say, in terms of retention, right? People retain only so much of what's told to them, and they retain slightly more of what they hear, right? And what people hear, what people read, and it kind of moves up all the way up to what pictures they see. So if they see pictures, that's much more engagement. A picture is really worth 1,000 words when it comes to technical training, where you can really discuss all the different pieces. But then even above pictures, when it's turned into a video, where you can actually see that thing close up on a video and you can watch it back, that is where really more interactive learning. The really only thing above video, highly interactive video content, is doing the task yourself, right? And that's really where hands-on learning can come in. And so, is it possible, right? So we're watching little videos. Let's say, how to measure voltage in a cabinet, watching little videos of, how to replace this pump, how to start up this machine, how to shut down this machine. Video content is king here. It can all be done digitally. Now, between videos and self-guided e-learning, I presented these first. And basically what happens next is, how do you keep track of all this, right? How do you keep track of who's learning what and how well people are doing in training? That's another kind of feather in the hat of digital learning, is that you can track and monitor people's progress. So you can know people are 63% the way through an e-learning module, and this collection of people are not doing so great on the post-test, whereas these people are excelling. And basically through learning management systems that are ways to package these e-learnings, you can track and monitor training across multiple shifts, multiple departments, in hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people, all in one central location. And then you can load it with whatever content you want, whether it's an e-learning module, short videos, or in the case of the third one, skills-based simulation. This is really where I start to, reflect on, okay, what is possible for the hands-on skills piece of digital learning, right? So obviously, I think we could all argue that e-learning and watching a video is not necessarily hands-on. They can be very interactive, very well animated. Like you see in the short video here, you can have a tabletop view of testing the actual device with your meter and what the reading should show and why. However, until you're actually asked to do that task yourself, you're not really going to have the idea. So again, turning to electrical kind of as the scenario here, skills-based simulations. What if you had a simulated environment where you have a full control panel with everything wired up in it, and you have a simulated electrical meter, and that control panel in that simulation is at 480 volts phase to phase, and you're testing across the leads in the most safe way you can, right? In doing your electrical troubleshooting as an electrician. Is there value in that in your facility? Is there a value in being able to open a pretend or a simulated panel that has all the same features and all the same things that will happen in the way it reacts as it would in the field? It's really up to your organization. Is there a place for simulations where it's somewhere between being told how to do it and actually doing it yourself on the live cabinet in your facility? Is there a place for learning in a safe environment, in an environment that won't hurt you? So in other words, in these simulations that TPC has, we go into the panel, and if you try to measure ohms on a live circuit, which is a big no-no, right? It'll give you a very loud and very sudden, indicator that you made the wrong choice, and you actually get a game over situation in these scenarios. That's way better than that occurring and blowing up your meter, let's say, in the field, right? So there really is a place to really learn some of the hands-on skills, maybe in a middle ground area. And just to kind of let you know, some of these simulated environments, it's amazing what is possible across the content development space in creating 3D simulated environments. And we're not talking about you have to download a huge, multi-gigabyte kind of program on your computer and it's super complicated. You literally just log into a website or a learning management system in this case. You just took course 1, you just took course 2 on electrical, you just watched this collection of videos. Now you're going to jump into a simulation right alongside of it. So it's cloud-based, it's internet-based. These types of technologies exist. And whether you can see here, you're learning about electricity and you're looking at that multimeter, and or you're jumping over to, let's say, a boiler, the one we see behind it, like a simulated boiler, and you have to inspect the boiler. There's really all sorts of things you can do. And this is a really interesting thing that TPC has dealt with when it comes to simulations, and when it's part of a digital learning package, is folks who are in the maintenance trade, let's say they've been in the trade for 20, 30 years, and those just starting out, they have a difference in the computer savviness, I guess you could say. So a real key to some of these simulations is they must be, and they're built to navigate through just single clicks of a mouse or a mouse pad. So if someone just has a mouse or a mouse pad on their device, they can navigate through these simulations easily, and you don't need to be, pressing a bunch of keys like you're playing a fancy computer game or anything. It's really just single point and click navigation that really gives you practice on some of these hands-on skills. Okay, so these are the simulations, and the last thing I would note about what's possible in a simulated environment, yeah, you're jumping in, you're in a sandbox, but at any time, there's a kind of an overlay of hints possible in that simulation. So you're not on your own. You're not just, trial by fire, as many of us in the maintenance field have to say. And I know I have mixed feelings about trial by fire. I've done it before where, all right, welcome to our company. You're out there on the floor, learn as you go. You're on your own kind of thing. This is more of a guided experience, and you can have a more guided experience through some of the guided simulations where, okay, here's a panel in front of you. What do you think you're going to do first? Do you need any help? And so there's a way to kind of ramp up that difficulty of these simulations based on who is learning about the topic, the hands-on skill topic at hand. And the last thing about these simulations is there's a whole rating system. So you can really judge how people are doing. Are they taking an hour to fix one of the issues, right? When you get further in a simulation, you're not just looking at a properly operating circuit. Something's wrong with the circuit, and it's up to you to troubleshoot and fix it, right? So the light won't come on or the motor won't start. What could be wrong? And you got to use your meter readings to figure out what's wrong, right? And figure out the issue. How fast were you able to get that done? Did it take you 60 minutes or did it take you 10 minutes to figure out the issue? And you get different scoring issues for efficiency. And then how many meter readings did you need to take? It's tracking all of this data that just in the field you can't track. It's just impossible. But simulations can really track, okay, how efficient are people? How many parts did they have to replace before they finally got the right part? You know how that is. You throw away a whole motor starter, you replace a relay, you replace all sorts of fun stuff, and it still doesn't work right. And it turns out you're wasting money. So there's a whole money aspect of how much money have you wasted. I guess point being, there's a lot of technology out there when it comes to learning skills over the internet and through a device. Even though it seems like a flat screen, people who are learning in that format can get a lot out of it. Now, kind of in the next format we're going to talk about, what if you don't have the time, right, to jump into a skills-based simulation for minutes and minutes or hours at a time? What if you just want to use a simulation or a skill for the basis of learning the skill in a quick, more digestible way, or maybe as a way as an employer to verify a skill quickly? There's something you kind of somewhere in between a simulation and a course, and that's what we call a skills verification exercise, or what TPC calls virtual skills module activity. So the ones you're seeing here, for instance, for our air conditioning customers here, you're looking at the side of an air conditioner, and you got hoses on the screen, you got the gauges, you got a clamp for temperature measurement, and you got to drag and drop the hoses and the clamps and look around. You can kind of rotate around the machine. Can you find the right ports where you need to attach the right hoses? And when the readings start showing up on your gauge, what you can click on them and look at them and say, okay, what does this reading mean? Does it mean this is working or not working? And so what's really cool is that employers can assign different scenarios of these little skills exercises. These are not done in several hours. These are done in maybe 10 or 15 minutes, right? Is a quick check on, okay, does this person really have the skills they need and verify the skills they need? These types of exercises can be really helpful as a way to increase the interaction within a classroom, let's say a virtual classroom environment where the instructor is going over something. Okay, now you jump into this exercise to practice and try it out. Or you just went through this collection of courses. Now it's time to verify those skills and see how you do, or do you need more practice before you're done, right? So this air conditioning one is an example, and then the one you see underneath that is PPE selection exercise. So there's a bunch of electrical PPE, and you need to dress the person on the screen in the right PPE, right? Fairly simple, just drag and drop the stuff on the person, but with all the options available to you, there's only one correct answer. So it's really a good way to practice. Do I know what I need to wear? Do I need to wear a balaclava, or do I need to wear a face shield? Or do I need to wear, a class 00 gloves or class 0 gloves? And you get a chance to look at the arc flash label, go back to the dressing room, and just really, practice these skills. And dressing in the correct PPE is definitely a skill. It takes practice, right? And sometimes people overlook that as part of the process when it comes to some of these safety things. Other types of activities lend themselves to a skills verification, some kind of one and done type of skills, like how to do a live dead live test inside of a panel, how to understand the different components of a refrigeration cycle, right? How to do a vibration test on a pump, right? Or an alignment check, or a belt tensioning on a pump. So some of these things can be done fairly quickly through an interactive exercise on a screen that they're interacting with, and they have to really know their stuff to do it right. Reading a schematic is another good one. You're looking at a big schematic, you're looking at all the pieces of the control circuit. Can you identify the different components on the schematic and how it works? That kind of stuff. So really now these again are loaded into an LMS alongside their e-learning modules and the videos that they're watching, and now they're practicing for themselves. And not just one person, but thousands of people across a company can be doing the same thing and getting varying results and learning in different ways. Okay, now that the training is done in the learning management system, right? We all know that at some point you got to get out of a learning kind of formalized learning environment and jump into on-the-job training, right? You have to do the trial by fire eventually, right? You have to be out there in the field doing the job. You're going to have to kind of step in. Well, on-the-job training can also be supported with technology and digital. And what I mean by that is, let's say for those of us obviously on the plant floor, which everyone here is really on the manufacturing side of the world most of the time. I was there too. I was in a plastic recycling center back in the day, and we had a bunch of extruders, right, that we were responsible for operating. Well, I talked to one operator, and they say, yeah, this is the way I start up the machine, right? My goal is to document the startup of this machine. Right? So, okay, here's how I start up the machine. I press this button, and then I do this, and then I turn down the temperature. Well, I actually turn down the temperature first, and then I press the button, and here's why. And so kind of standardizing processes is one thing, but then what if those were all documented and ready to be accessed at any time on a nearby tablet that's at the operator station, or at a laptop that's near the operator station, or a little kiosk near the operator station? And then you take it one step further. Okay, yeah, we could have a PDF of the SOP or the startup procedure. That's one thing. But then really you can create interactive learning modules in the moment, we call it, in the moment learning module, where, okay, this thing, this machine it's not working properly. Let's say it's not starting up properly, or this one lifting table on the machine will not lift properly, right? What could be wrong? You can use on-the-job training aids to troubleshoot individual issues by clicking around the interface, be able to look at, okay, the lifting table lifting, what does it take? And then it gives you kind of a narrow colorized version of the schematic diagram, as you can see here. It lights up certain parts, it makes them interactive, which parts need to be troubleshot by the technician or the operator. And then you can click further to get pictures of exactly where that is in the field. And trying to learn that stuff word of mouth or from person to person is difficult, right? It's actually more difficult than just having it all in one centralized location that people can access, whether they're on day shift or night shift. So what I'm saying is really learning isn't over, and training isn't over once you leave the classroom, right? And probably the most important part of the training begins when you leave the computer lab or you leave the classroom and you're on the job. There's still tools that you should be considering for digital learning, because on-the-job training is something that can and should be documented. in that format, and it really lends itself to that format. We all know that just passing knowledge through what we call tribal knowledge, quote unquote, where it's just, word of mouth passed down through the generations of technicians. Here's the way I have always done it. Now it's time for you to learn that way too. That's just a reality for many, many facilities. But just kind of, again, what's possible, knowing what's possible, there is a better way. It takes some commitment in terms of making sure everything is written down and documented. And then building an actual training module and program around that is just next level. And companies time and time again see value in reduction of downtime, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment about that. And then finally, I'm sure you all are cringing at that picture that just showed up, right? We've seen this many times. Virtual instruction, right? So logging into Zoom, there is, for those of us, I know many of us in the technician field are very social people, right? We all actually learn through collaboration in a lot of ways. I know I'm that type of learner as well. So if I can talk about it in a group or talk about it with an instructor or just have a conversation about it, that's a whole different side of learning that is still lending itself. If that expert on your machine that you're trying to run is in Japan, or they're in Germany, or they're somewhere else, you can use technology to log in and talk to them. Or if you have 3 technicians in Texas and the other 3 are in Washington State and the other 3 are in Boston, everyone get onto one classroom and learn the same thing from the expert instructor at the same time. And then at a certain time, you all get links, let's say, throughout the virtual instruction. So this isn't just talking at you for 8 hours and you're just listening to someone on your screen talk. No. Virtual instruction is way more interactive than it ever used to be. Thanks to, if you look over to your left, these skills verification exercises and the videos and the simulations. So in these classes now, we're utilizing technology in the classroom. So, all right, we've been talking about, proper troubleshooting techniques using your voltmeter. Now let's practice it for ourselves. Time to do an exercise on your own. We already know everyone has internet access. So here's a link. You click in here, and now you're starting to work on this activity for the next 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about the results of your lab activity online after that. So again, there's more hands-on activities here than ever have been before possible in a digital format, right? So that just gives you a quick window into what's possible, right? And, what's the right mix of this? What is the right way of packaging this together? As you can imagine, it depends. Some facilities and organizations really value instructor-led training, where they want to be talking to the expert about it and they want to have a chance to ask questions. So they might steer toward more virtual instruction when it comes to digital, or they might just say, you know what, digital is all well and good, but I need more in-person classroom or just on the job. We don't have time for training, right? There's all sorts of issues, but at the end of the day, there is a way to package these in a smart way. And TPC, on our end, we're constantly looking at ways of repackaging digital training in particular. And here's just one, right? Here's a digital troubleshooting curriculum. So if someone's looking to learn skills about troubleshooting electrical circuits, what are some ways to package different formats of training? Well, here's one. They can take a collection of a few of these e-learning courses, let's say, and take those. We're not talking about sitting in a computer lab for a whole week and just watching a screen, all day, every day for a week. Again, self-paced. So then maybe you take an hour here, an hour there, and you're able to complete these over the course of a few months, really. That's what we're talking about here when it comes to completing training. That's digital. It's always there when you need it, but also you don't need to be sitting down. It's not an event. It's a format that you can always come back to. So taking a few courses and then jumping into a simulation to practice for level 1. And in this case, they're learning the basics of electrical circuits and control circuits. And then when they jump into level 2, they start learning about 3-phase systems and the more advanced motor controls in the simulation. And then they start learning about kind of instrumentation and level measurement. And then they jump into an industrial control, which is using instrumentation for the first time. And then level 3 jumps them into, PLCs. We all love the PLCs. And I know in my facility, we only had one person, maybe a half a person, who really knew about PLCs. And wouldn't it be great to increase the knowledge and skills with understanding what's going on there? There's ways of getting there and building a curriculum to get us there. What's great about these, just the one thing I would say, is that if you're building this curriculum, and you say, you know what, that's a little too much e-learning. I don't want to take 5 courses before jumping into a course. And my people already know about schematics. They've been doing it for years. Guess what? These curriculums are not necessarily what we call prerequisite, like you might think of in college. They are a template to start from, and then you can start pulling, you can, what's the word? Start editing and customizing from there. So you can strike this 102 course. You can add in maybe another course on instrumentation that you're more interested in, or just strike this all together and shorten what it means to be a level 1 technician, and add maybe a skills verification exercise or an on-the-job training exercise after that. So there's really all sorts of ways to package different modes of digital learning. Okay, you need to watch these videos. Okay, you need to interact with this interactive module, and that kind of thing. So this is just kind of one idea of giving you that. Now, before I close up, I just want to briefly chat about the return on investment for digital learning. So for any of you who are dealing with the accounting minds among us, right, those who really talk in dollars and cents, and the first thing they see when they see digital training is dollars and cents, right? You know, I've given this webinar talk several times about, you know, how can those of us who obviously are interested in training and training our people, how can we make the case for training to our folks at our plant? So I'm going to start with just a really quick rundown of 3 value propositions, we call it, for training in general, and then we're going to move on to real world scenarios of actual digital learning in particular, right, and what makes digital learning return on its investment versus any other type of training. So first, for training in general, I think that for us, our customers really say reduced downtime. That is number 1 and the most quantifiable. So imagine this, right? I think we can all relate to this. One of your lines goes down unexpectedly. Something broke down. First of all, I want you to imagine, you know, how much of a fire drill that becomes, right? People are running around, they're trying to figure out what's wrong, how do we fix it, what's going on? Oh, we need to find this, we need to run through here, we need to look at this. And before you know it, either several minutes or maybe hours are going by. Oh, this part was actually fixed by a foreign company, and we need to call them back from that other country to get them to fix it. Or, you know, oh, the person who really knows the answer to this question is off today, and we need to wait till tomorrow, or they're on vacation, or whatever it might be. It's just a whole process, right? With the help of, you know, enhanced knowledge and skills out there on the floor, and maybe even some on-the-job tools for training, people can get the information they need quicker and easier, and you can maybe find people you can rely on to fix issues. So then that, let's say 2 hours or 2 days of downtime turns into maybe a few minutes of downtime, right? So next question is, obviously for dollars and cents, is how much does it cost your company per hour of downtime? I'm sure numbers are coming to your mind, right? For some of the facilities I've worked in, and I know I talked to many of the people in the classroom, this question, the answers range, right, from $10,000 per hour per line times 12 lines, you know, that ends up being $1 million very, very quickly, to, you know, $1 million per line, depending on how much throughput, right? So that's a payback. If you can get people troubleshooting skills they need to fix issues even 15 minutes quicker, 30 minutes quicker, there's a return on investment that can be turned into dollars and cents with a little bit of Excel spreadsheet work. You should be able to get a number there to present, right? And then here's another one that's always hard for the EH&S folks out there to make the case for: fewer safety incidents, right? In a highly production-based environment, safety is always number 1, but sometimes when it comes to safety initiatives, it's a little harder to deal with those because they come with a price tag, and then the payback is unclear. Well, what can be quantified, as we all know, is workers' compensation costs that are avoided, or OSHA violations and fines and citations that can be avoided. And so speaking in those dollars and cents, which is pretty much an all or nothing proposition, yeah, you're not having any financial issues until you have one of the most devastating financial issues you can have, where someone seriously gets hurt or killed. So there is statistics out there on the OSHA.gov website about citation information and workers' comp estimates and that kind of thing. So I highly recommend you check that out. And not to mention, I mean, this one seems soft and fuzzy and touchy-feely, but improved culture of learning at your organization. Now, this lends itself to a few things that lead to the bottom line. First is less turnover, right? So people feel like they have a real pathway to success at their company, so they're going to keep going because, hey, the company's investing in my learning. I get a chance to learn about PLCs. This is great for my career, that kind of thing. They feel like they're advancing. They feel like actually they know what's next in terms of pay raise and pay grade. And I'm a technician 2, and I'm going to be pursuing to be a technician 3 through this program, that kind of stuff. So those are really the 3 big ones. And then when we flip over to digital learning in particular, right? First one I would say about digital learning in particular is compared to classroom learning, right? There's really no travel required. You don't have to get in your car or even an airplane to get to a nearby class location. We all know, for us who have pursued classroom learning, how that struggle is real. I know TPC deals with that struggle as we do schedule our own classroom classes. Travel is an issue, particularly in today's day and age where lanes can be crowded, highways can be crowded. And hotel and transportation costs, they add up very quickly. Not anymore. As long as you have an internet connection and a mouse, you can be doing some really high impact learning across, and this is the second one, across large teams. So if you have a huge company with just multiple departments, or let's say you have the reliability team in Ohio, but then you also have the maintenance and reliability team in Boston, and then you go over to Minnesota and you have an operations team that's also serving as a technician workforce, and you're trying to train contractors and you're trying to train management. You can basically have customized packages of digital learning for each of those different groups managed in one location, and you can be basically checking up on the monitoring of that as the plant manager or the training supervisor, and be able to check in on progress much more readily using technology to do that monitoring for you. And then you can just check in whenever you want to get an update, right? It's better than trying to track down handwritten sign-in sheets for training. I know I've been there when I was running the training program at that recycling center. It was not easy to track down sign-in sheets and that kind of thing. You know who's done what training and who's not doing the training quickly through learning management systems. And then finally, if anyone has the Outlook calendar that they're dealing with, or a production calendar, this probably isn't, you're no stranger to a calendar that looks like this, right? Just completely blocked with different things to do, different meetings, different things you got to be doing. How do you make time for training with a schedule like this, right? So this is another place where digital learning might work best. Oh, you know, I do see a little block there from 8 to 9 a.m. on Thursday, right? That's not taken yet. That's my time to spend some time on training. Maybe, 4:30 to 5 p.m. on Thursday is looking good too. So you can basically make very specific, smaller scale time commitments for training for some of these self-guided formats. I'm going to jump into the simulation from 9 to 9:30. I'm going to try to fix one of the faults during that time. And then by the time I log in next time, I'll be on the next exercise. That's randomized in that system and that kind of thing. And you can just slowly get through your training that way. So there's a bunch of different ways. And the last thing I'll really talk about, so hopefully that helps make a case, I guess you could say, on digital learning. Training large groups quickly, I mean, in terms of dollars and cents, really it's all about the logistics of making that happen, okay? Now the whole real world scenarios we talked about at the tail end of our agenda. Just some direct quotes from people who we've worked with that have used digital training, and kind of what are some of the results they're seeing and some of the ways they've used digital training. The first one is this quote that says, "Our company has achieved better than 95% availability rate for our maintained equipment." So this speaks to the downtime issue, right? They were under 90%. They're in the 80s. They're able to up that to 95% and really squeeze down that downtime because people had the skills and they needed to pick up the meter and know where to look in that cabinet to fix the issues quicker, right? And this is kind of the at-scale issue in action. So more than 150 apprentices have completed troubleshooting training, helping to meet the objectives for training in electrical theory, code, and safety, right? We know safety, we know electrical code, we know electrical theory is important, but sometimes we forget that many people need to learn that. And I just want you to think about, what it might take to get 150 apprentices through a classroom, right? With such a, let's say 2 apprentices per shift, per facility, whatever. It's just no easy task. Digital learning makes the logistics of that a little bit more smoothly. Here's on the simulation side of the methods. So the simulations enable students to practice in a safe and non-threatening environment. Right? It's the whole, hey, I can make mistakes. I can blow myself up in this simulation. It's not a problem. But I'm learning those hard to learn lessons in this safe environment. The courses are easy to deliver, track, and manage, period, right? So the content itself can speak for itself depending on how you build out that digital content. But the fact that you can deliver, track, and manage it from the meta level, from the learning management system level, that just adds a whole new level of, thank goodness, to the training coordinator and the plant manager to say, how's training going out there on the floor? Here we can look at this report developed by the training management system. And then finally, less time spent on service calls means more service calls being completed per technician, right? Which means those employees are more profitable. So if we're talking about gross margin at this point, we can talk those dollars and cents again, because less labor costs for service calls, you know, calling someone out from outside of the facility, like a contractor to do these calls, we can actually fix these things in-house. I mean, that speaks volumes. We all know how expensive contractors can be per hour, right? And so that is fixed a little bit by pursuing more digital training and getting people those knowledge and skills in that environment. That is all I had today. I just want to say thank you for everyone for listening. I'm going to be happy to take any questions on the line today and be able to chat more about digital learning and training in general. Here's our number. We have a huge team of technical content experts who can tell you more about some of these methods. And, you know, you can just brainstorm methods. I love doing that with people out there in the facilities, just to be like, you know, what does this look like? What does this look like? Oh, let's talk about it. TPCtraining.com, you know, obviously has the latest on how we're pursuing it on our end, but obviously there's no one size fits all canned approach to digital learning. That's the key I wanted to make, key observation. And so, yeah, that's really it. Thank you so much, Tom. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you, Ryan, for that overview. It's a complex situation out there, especially with the pandemic influencing who can travel, who can't, and really enhancing the digital options people have to communicate and get trained. We have plenty of time for some questions, and there are already a bunch rolling in, Ryan. For anyone who does have questions for Ryan, go ahead and please look at the Ask a Question box. It's off to the left-hand side of your screen, and you can type in your question for Ryan. And at this point, we'll get to as many questions as we can get to. And for those we can't, or for those that come in on demand, Ryan will be able to address those with you one-on-one via email. So, Ryan, the first question is one on curriculum development. And this one says, how do we build a curriculum like the ones you proposed if we aren't sure which skills and knowledge are required for a given job?
Oh, that's a good one. And that's a hard one because, you know, if you're not sure where to begin, right? What kind of training program do I need to build, right? How do I know they need electrical theory, then DC circuits, and then AC motors, and then all this stuff? Like, it can be overwhelming, particularly with just I don't even know how to put it, an endless library of online training options available to you. It can be a daunting task. So I guess what I would say there is, if you're not really sure where to begin with developing a digital training program, I highly, highly recommend pursuing what we call a training needs assessment. This is kind of a best practice in the training industry as a whole. A training needs evaluation, we call it at TPC. It has different names, but essentially what it means is a TNE, training needs evaluation, is basically a consultative approach. You know, you have a subject matter expert, a really training expert come in and maybe spend a day or two just talking to your workforce. This has been really a great process for many people we work with, where the subject matter expert comes into the facility, gets to interview with members of the workforce all the way up from plant managers through all the technicians, operators, whoever might be looking for getting training, and getting the consensus among each of them about what works best for your training. What would you like to see in training? Where are your gaps? And then for those who are experts on the job in the facility, what are the skills you think need to be met to be successful at this job, and what those subject matter experts can do. That kind of a third-party look can provide what we call a competency mapping. So basically a mapping of all the skills requisite for that job. You need to be able to use a multimeter. You need to be able to test relays. You need to be able to wear proper PPE. You need to understand the National Electrical Code. You need to, the list goes on. You need to be able to test motor starters, but not necessarily PLCs. You'll need to X, Y, and Z. Maybe you'll need to test PLCs, but you won't necessarily need to look at the programming of the PLC, for instance. And there's designating guidelines. Or maybe Technician 2 will test the PLC, but once you're Technician 3, you can do the programming of the PLC. All that kind of stuff, and getting a whole, not just a curriculum guide, but a whole pathway, a career pathway from beginner to expert in your facility. And that basically can create a whole journey for learning through a training needs evaluation. And it's really only a 2-day commitment usually. You can get a lot of information from talking to the workforce in 2 straight days. And I know a typical plant can't just stop and talk to people. So allow a third party to come in and talk to people. I know TPC is in the business of doing training needs evaluations for our customers who aren't really sure what to do next. It's a really good place to start when you're not sure which format of digital learning might work best for you.
Okay. Well, we have 2 questions in a row on different kinds of objections to digital learning. So we'll start with the first one, Ryan. The question is, my facility's on-the-job training has been word of mouth for years. How can we convince the organization to move to digital?
That is such a good question, right? I mean, what you're saying is what pretty much probably most of you on the call are thinking, right? Is, man, our on-the-job training is not documented. It's all just word of mouth. That tribal knowledge, we call it, right? How do we move on from that? How do we advance from that? I guess the only way I can respond is try, right? Try on one line, try on one part of the process, introducing technology to help that process. I'd say if you have printed or PDF SOPs, try making those available on a tablet, or try taking your cell phone up. I know a couple of our customers have worked with us to literally just use your cell phone to record some video of who you think has the best practice of doing that and get that video circulated. Just start introducing some of these formats of learning and see if people respond well to it. And really, it's a kind of whole pilot program type of thing. It's definitely changing on the job training. It doesn't happen overnight for sure. However, it can be done in a kind of what we call turnkey approach, where you slowly roll it out, see what people are thinking, what they'd like to change, and then revise the approach to the program and go from there. So there really is a lot of different ways to pursue it for sure.
Okay. Well, and this next question is kind of like that first one, although I think there's a nuance here which is important. What do you say to those who are still not convinced that digital training offers the hands-on experience necessary for so-called proper training? So instead of just word of mouth, I mean, we're talking about hands-on experience versus digital training.
Yes, absolutely. You know what? I can't, unfortunately, tell you one way or another. Really, my goal today is to say, you know what? I'm going to let you draw your own conclusions based on what you saw is possible in a digital format and whether that meets, right? So I know, for instance, some folks here might say, you know what? I want the instructor or the company to bring that hands-on training kit with them, and I can work on real relays and real motor starters and real circuits and in kind of these real equipment demo kits. And I would say, before I poo-poo that at all, TPC is in the business of providing hands-on equipment in their classrooms as well. But there is a certain, what's the word? A certain ability to demonstrate concepts and skills more quickly across multiple people with digital hands-on type of exercises or digital interactive exercises. Yes, they're definitely not hands-on to the actual equipment, and there definitely comes a time where you have to have your hands on that equipment. However, is there room in your training for that point, that extra notch in your tool belt to be able to jump into a simulation or a skills verification exercise to really test someone's knowledge, let's say when you first hire them or when you're seeing whether they're ready to be Technician 2 or Technician 3? that's where I think the fun can happen for sure in terms of are they useful? Are they hands-on enough? And I guess the last thing I would say is, you know what? If you're still not convinced, all I highly recommend you to do is to try it. Go ahead and just try it once. You know, demos are absolutely free. Most online training type of softwares. Give it a shot and see if you feel like you learned something after taking that experience, and see what's possible for sure.
Okay. Well, great. We have time for maybe 2 questions, especially if I'm going to try and find one where the answer might be relatively brief, so we can get 2 more of them in here. This one, I think, is more of a yes or a no thing. This one is, during the courses, can you go back and review materials before taking the final exam?
Yes, absolutely. That's the key feature of many e-learning and online courses is you can go back and review any of the lessons. We subdivide courses into lessons, at least at TPC. So yeah, you can go back and watch through the lesson about relays again if you want to remember what did they say about how they work. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, and this is the question about software. The question itself is, what software do you use or recommend for creating these simulated training exercises? And let me just, I'll open it up a little bit by saying, you know, do people need special software downloads, or is this the kind of thing you can do over like a Chrome browser or over Zoom? But what software requirements are normally needed here?
Sure thing. So if this individual is asking of creating them, you know, how we created them from scratch, I'll start with, you know, how to interact with them. Yeah, all you need is a web browser and then, you know, an internet connection. That's pretty much all you need. You don't even need Zoom.
Okay.
You can be doing online or offline, but to create them from scratch, you know, anything that can interface with the learning management system would be my answer. So if you can deal with any sort of exporting software that creates packages in HTML5 or SCORM format, then you're off to the races. You know, Articulate products come to mind, that kind of thing. There's all sorts of different, you know, HTML5 producing type of products out there.
Okay.
And so we use modeling, you know, through Unity and other 3D simulators. And so that's another way of developing content. Unity is big in the training industry right now for creating 3D simulation.
Interesting. That's now I'm not in touch as closely as you are with the nuts and bolts of development, but Unity is the hot program these days for doing new courses, you said?
Yeah, especially when it comes to simulations, where you're literally from the viewpoint and the eyes of someone working in the field, and you can walk around the 3D environment. Yeah, that's mostly, a lot of times we see it's in Unity. There's a bunch of other Adobe products and other things that do 3D design as well. So it really depends on your preference.
Okay. Well, I know we've got a few more questions queued up, but those look like they're going to open up to longer answers. So, Ryan, if it's okay with you, I'll leave those for one-on-one opportunities for you and the questioners to take it up by email, and move to close and just say, first off, Ryan, thank you so much for this overview. I think you cleared up a lot of ideas for people on digital training.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And let me also thank our sponsor today, TPC, and everyone who joined us today, whether live day or on demand. This webinar has been recorded, and it'll be available shortly for on-demand viewing. You're also encouraged to visit plantservices.com to gain access to even more tools and resources into helping you achieve success. Once again, Ryan's full set of speaker slides will remain available in the handouts area. During live day, you have about 1 more minute to go and grab those. But also, they will be stashed there for all on-demand viewers. So if you missed a chance to download it now, you can always go back and get them by just logging on the on-demand version. Did you like the presentation? Let us know your thoughts by answering the brief survey that will appear on your screen shortly. Your candid answers are not only appreciated, they help us craft future and better events. So once again, thanks for your attendance, and have a great rest of the day.